Hello everyone, and I'm Autobot Sonic, a Telltale Gamer, bringing latest something Telltale games, Transformers, and more. And wow, I gotta say, honestly, it feels so good to be back to doing Transformers Cyberverse reviews again. And after, recording, it's been about a week now since I've recorded all of my reviews for the remainder of Season 1 of Transformers Cyberverse. Having gone back now to record those was great, and I can't wait to see how Season 2 goes, because honestly, I've just finished watching the first episode of Season 2, Episode 1, Sea of Tranquility, and wow, what a great way to start this episode. Already miles ahead of the start of the first episode of Season 1 with Fractured. This episode was so good. And honestly, really, since we now know all these characters, we can just jump right into the action, and it's just, everything was so good about this fight. Not this fight, but the whole episode as a whole. I can't just stop gushing over it, so I'm just gonna go over and just start ranting now about everything this episode did right. So the episode starts off, of all places, in a flashback. Yeah, just when we thought we were done with flashbacks since Season 1 was all about Bumble Bee getting his memories back, we are starting Season 2 of Cyberverse, Power of the Spark, off with another flashback. And this one is, oddly enough, back to the flashback that we saw in Episode 3 of Season 1, also called Allspark, where it was Bumblebee when he was delivering the Allspark to Grimlock and the other Autobots at the drop-off point when he got intercepted by Starscream. It's a flashback to that flashback of him basically, of the Allspark calling out to Bumblebee, and then Bumblebee holding the Allspark, and as it power charges up him and the surrounding area. And considering the fact that this season is going to be heavily focused on the Allspark, I mean that the subtitle of Season 2 is literally Power of the Spark, I think it's safe to say that that's going to be playing a very big part into Season 2 of Transformers Cyberverse. So I'm eager to see how that goes. But as Bumblebee is in this flashback, he gets woken up out of his flashback by Windblade, where Bumblebee realizes he is on the moon battling a bunch of Decepticons, Autobots and Decepticons fighting all around him, and then it cuts to Megatron in tank form charging straight towards Bumblebee, and immediately Bumblebee screams out Megatron's name, but in his own voice, not in a radio voice. So it's basically confirmed that at some point now in between Seasons 1 and 2, Ratchet had fixed up Bumblebee's voice box yet again, because we saw this back in a bunch of flashbacks in Season 1 where Bumblebee lost his voice box getting ripped out by Megatron. He wasn't able to talk for the remainder of the war, but when he was on the Ark, it got fixed back up, and then he lost his voice box again after he had amnesia and forgot who he was. So it's safe to say, after the events of Season 1, Ratchet probably just fixed up Bumblebee's voice box again, and now he's able to speak properly, which I'm honestly really excited to see another Transformers series besides Robots in Disguise we had 5 years ago, where we have a Bumblebee that actually speaks now, and we get to hear more of Jeremy Levy's awesome take as Bumblebee, in my opinion. And while we're at it, we also got to take into account that the theme song for Transformers Cyberverse Season 2 changes now. It's a very minuscule change, but it also gives a kind of a pretty big hint as to what we can expect from Season 2. Now again, this is coming from someone who's only maybe seen a few out of context clips of Seasons 2 through 4, so I don't know the whole story of this, but as we see, the intro for Transformers Cyberverse Season 2, Power to Spark, is basically the same as it was from Season 1, with one exception. That is towards the end of, the halfway point, where in Season 1 we had the clip of after the Allspark opens, it shows all of Bumblebee's memories on different people, and kind of zooms in on a memory of Starscream. This time we just see Starscream in person, put on, seems to be energized by the Allspark at some point, and gets this huge spark armor, and immediately this makes me flash back to Transformers Robots in Disguise 2015 with Steeljaw, and even that version of Starscream, who used the Decepticon Hunters and the Allspark to power them. Yeah, not the Allspark, the Decepticon Hunters really to power themselves up and get the super armor in the process. It really reminds me of that to a degree. And so, but not only that, we also see several other Autobots that are going to be playing, I assume they're going to be main characters throughout Season 2. We see Wheeljack, Grimlock, Hot Rod, RC, and even Cheetor, who has yet to show up this season, but I know remember watching the trailer back in the day and several out-of-context clips I've seen of Transformers Cyberverse Power to Spark, that Cheetor is going to be a very main character in Season 2 of Cyberverse. So it'll be nice to see how Cheetor goes, because, again, my only exposure to Cheetor has been through one episode of watching Beast Wars all the way back in 2016, 5 years ago, when I covered it for Transformers Beast Wars 20th anniversary. And if you want to see me do that, see that review, I'll probably link to it in the video as a card or something. I'll also be you know, I might actually, even since before the end of this year, I may actually go and do a review of the second episode of Transformers Beast Wars now, because it's the 25th anniversary of Beast Wars. But who knows? We'll have to wait and see if you guys want that. So be sure to leave in the comments below if you'd want to see a review of more Beast Wars, because I'm certainly excited to see what Cheetor's role in Cyberverse Season 2 is going to be. So after the opening, we cut back to Bumblebee watching as Megatron looks like he's going to get ready to run him over in his tank mode, but then Windblade saves him by picking him up and throwing him out of the way. Windblade explains to Bumblebee that he's been unconscious for a while after taking a blast from some unknown Decepticon, most likely from Megatron, considering that he was charging right at him. And so basically their conversation kind of gets interrupted as they're literally fighting Decepticons from all angles all around them. And as Bumblebee and Windblade fight, Bumblebee hopes that the humans on Earth aren't too upset with them bringing their warp to their planet. And we get this really awkward transition to showing what's been happening, I guess, in the weeks or even months since the Season 1 finale, of how the humans on Earth have been reacting to all the different Autobots and Decepticons now on Earth. And it's they start out harmless, but then they get really weird, but also super hilarious at the same time. It starts off with this one clip, which we also see is dated in I believe September 2007. So we have a little date there as to when Cyberverse Season 2 takes place in the year 2007, which may be a nice little callback to the release of the first Bayverse movie, which was also in 2007, as this person that's filming Optimus, Bumblebee, and even Windblade in their alt modes are just parked in the middle of the street for no reason. Well, I guess the humans trying to convince them to transform. And then it cuts to another video of a newscopter watching Prowl chase Shadow Striker, both in their alt mode, thinking it's a police chase. And then all of a sudden, Shadow Striker transforms and starts beating on Prowl's hood, and then he transforms and they start fighting. And then the funniest thing ever happens, in my opinion. We cut to a YouTube video labeled top 3 robot fails, and we watch this guy who's narrating Megatron walk through a bunch of telephone wires and trip up. And the fact that it's Megatron of all characters just getting tangled up in all these telephone wires and then having humans basically meme on Megatron. I didn't know I needed this in a Transformers cartoon until now, but honestly, it's hilarious. Then we cut to 2 other clips in this little video. One of someone recording Bumblebee dancing outside the arc, but then just slipping as he slides down a cliff. And then number 1 goes to Hot Rod, who is doing donuts and stunts over the cliff that Bumblebee tried to jump across back in episode 1 of Season 1, and then as Hot Rod finishes and transforms, he ends up slipping on the edge of the cliff and falling down into it. And again, this is just, it's so random, but I think it's a nice way of also showing just how humans have taken to accepting all the Autobots and Decepticons on world. And even though it seems ridiculous, you see people making light of such horrible situations or such bizarre things all the time. You see memes being made about everything. So of course there would be someone out there in the world making a meme about if Decepticons just suddenly ended up invading the Earth. You know for sure someone would just meme a video of Megatron just tripping up on a bunch of telephone cables. You just know they would. And honestly, props to the Cyberverse writers for doing this. I don't know who came up with this, but I love it. And so this little flashback ends with a live stream of a news broadcast Optimus gives to a bunch of humans, presumably after a big Decepticon attack, where he vows to have all the Autobots protect Earth until Decepticons leave. And then that cuts really well, actually, back to the present, where Optimus rallies up all the other Autobots to battle Megatron's forces on the moon. And we get this really cool scene of Optimus battling Megatron, and it's really cool to see them actually go toe-to-toe each other. We saw a little bit of this back in, I believe it was episode 3, Allspark, but to have now a proper fight between Megatron and Optimus, it's really nice to see. And also, it's great to hear more of Mark Thompson as Megatron. He absolutely sells it as Megatron. Jake Fushi, I'm still kind of iffy on his performance, because it still sounds like he's just trying to impersonate Peter Cullen, but to the same degree, it's not horrible. It's definitely noticeable that he's doing a Peter Cullen impersonation, but it's not to the point where it's just oh, I wish I was just listening to Peter Cullen right now. It's still a really good impersonation, in my opinion. Now, as Optimus and Megatron are fighting, we also cut to Shockwave with Slipstream, Starscream, and Soundwave, and a bunch of other Decepticons standing in front of this thing that Megatron calls, I think it's called the Planet Smasher. And basically, Shockwave's plan is just, he can't seem to get enough of trying to destroy the Earth, so he's got this big death laser on the moon, essentially, that's going to break through the Earth, destroy its core, and basically just blow up the planet that Shockwave has set up on the moon. And Soundwave keeps it at bay. It was nice to see more of Soundwave in this episode, too, especially how we get this nice little clip of him taking out 3 Autobots, and not really taking them out as in killing them. He kind of just sends out a large shockwave that just knocks all the Autobots all these Autobot grunts into space, like out into orbit. And it's cool to see this version of Soundwave as well, where he uses like kind of like weaponized dubstep to a degree. And I kind of riffed on Mark Swint's performance as Soundwave back in season 1 of Cyberverse, but I gotta say, like, listening to him much more this episode where he has a much of a larger role compared to how he was in season 1, I gotta say, I'm slowly leaning in more towards Mark Swint's Soundwave being pretty cool, because unlike other Soundwaves where he's just super robotic and, I guess, stiff in a way, it's nice to see a take on a lot younger Soundwave, or one that sounds more, I guess, reckless to a degree. And I think that's what Cyberverse is trying to accomplish with this version of Soundwave, and I'm all for that. Again, my only experiences with Soundwave are the IDW comic Soundwave, G1 Soundwave, Bayverse Soundwave, and Prime Soundwave. I haven't seen, I know Soundwave exists in animated, but I haven't watched any episodes with him in it, so if animated Soundwave is a lot different from other Soundwaves, be sure to let me know in the comments below. Anyway, as they're all fighting, Optimus tries to contact Hot Rod and Prowl for more support, but they've got their hands full with Shadow Striker, where we see, it's really cool that basically Hot Rod and Prowl are running away from Shadow Striker in like a little divot crater on the moon. So it's cool to see that they're kind of like wall riding the crater in a way, when Shadow Striker just dives into the crater in her car form and then just slams on the ground with enough impact to send Prowl and Hot Rod flying through the air. And it's such a brief scene where we see Shadow Striker fight Hot Rod and Prowl, but it's really cool just to see other characters interact now, where we've just been stuck with Windblade and Bumble Bee for the most time back in season 1. And speaking of Windblade, we also get a really nice fight between her, Starscream, and like a lot more Seekers. So it starts off mostly with Windblade battling Starscream, and while I really like this dogfight that Windblade and Starscream have going on, there's one thing that just bothers me a little bit, and that's sort of like how inconsequential damage is in this fight, because towards the start of the fight, Starscream ends up unloading this entire salvo of rockets or missiles at Windblade. They all hit her, this big explosion, but all she does is that when all the damage that's done to her, she's forced to crash land back on the moon, transforms, and just like rolls on the ground a bit. And when she gets up, she's fine, no scuff marks, no broken wings or anything. And yet when she takes even like a single blaster shot from one of the Seekers later on in that episode, she just loses control for a little bit, and it's almost like the exact same amount of damage as that all the Starscream's missiles did as well. And that just kind of bothers me, because while the fight is good, the fact that seemingly this one laser shot from a single Seeker does only a bit less damage than getting hit by every single rocket that Starscream fires at her, just feels a little bit odd to me. And I understand, like, now, what they could have done is maybe just have, like, 1 or 2 of those rockets hit her, but the fact that she gets hit with almost, like, a dozen of them, that just feels really, really weird to me. And so, but it's really cool, because after that, we cut to Bumble Bee Battle, like, cornered between a bunch of random Decepticon grunts, and Bumble Bee decides to get away by using the low gravity of the moon to his advantage by shooting his Stinger blaster down at the ground of the moon and launching himself up into the air. So we get this cute little moment where Bumblebee's just losing control of himself in the low gravity and constantly going up and back down by shooting the ground to launch himself up. Eventually gets to this really cool point, though, where Windblade catches Bumblebee in the middle of the air, and the two of them just do this cool spin maneuver where Bumblebee, like, spins around on Windblade's wing and shoots at all these Seekers chasing her, and then they both even get a few hits on Starscream, but as he doesn't seem to turn, as he closes in on them both after getting more backup after Windblade lands a few hits on him. He's about to come down on Windblade and Windblade and Bumblebee when they crash, when Grimlock just jumps up into the air and catches Starscream in his mouth like a frisbee, chewing him a bit before tossing him aside like a chew toy, which I think honestly hilarious. And so after that, Starscream and the other Seekers retreat, while we cut back again to Optimus battling Megatron. And we get a really cool callback here, actually, to G1 Megatron and Optimus in the end of the G1 premiere, where it had Megatron battling Optimus on the dam, and they both took out, like, Megatron had the Energon flail, or mace. It was a flail, and Optimus had the axe on battling on the dam at the end of the G1 premiere episode. We get that right here, the two of them battling on the moon with an Energon flail and an Energon axe. And it's really cool to see, like, just how these two go at it for each other. Optimus uses his Autobot insignia shield that he used a few times back in Season 1 flashbacks. And he managed to get a pretty good hit on Megatron here. At one point, he ends up actually managing to slice, like, basically his Achilles tendon, one of Megatron's Achilles tendons, for a lack of better term, at the back of his calf, the crippling Megatron. And as he calls back for air support, though, but Starscream just flat out refuses him in typical Starscream fashion. And while Shockwave tries to tell Starscream to go ahead and get Megatron the backup he asked for, Starscream decides not to, as Grimlock and a bunch of other Autobots are closing in on the Planet Smasher, and instead activates the Planet Smasher's force field. And basically Starscream then openly mocks Megatron, saying that he was too weak if he couldn't handle Optimus and a few other Autobots by himself. But lo and behold, Megatron is already there, having fended off Optimus long enough to retreat back to the Planet Smasher with Starscream. And Starscream is just terrified at this point, in typical Starscream fashion, where we have Megatron just choke Starscream out of her bed and toss him around. He ends up just mocking Starscream and threatening to kill him, and Starscream tries to pin the blame on Slipstream, saying that she told him to activate the Planet Smasher's force field. And you think Megatron's going to go and punish Slipstream, but of course not, because Megatron's not an idiot. He instead decides to promote Slipstream to head of the Seekers instead of Starscream, and Starscream, of course, does not take that well at all. So, with the force field up, Shockwave says that the Planet Smasher is almost complete in breaking the Earth's atmosphere and destroying the planet, but thankfully Optimus and the other Autobots arrive just in time to destroy it by having Wheeljack create this device that basically pierces through the force field that Shockwave and Starscream would put up and destroy the Planet Smasher with the help of Grimlock, Bumblebee, and all the other Autobots. So as they're fighting, Megatron, Starscream, Soundwave, and Shockwave, along with a bunch of other Decepticons, retreats into an elevator and takes them deep into the moon's core, while the Autobots secure the sites of the Autobot of the remains of the Planet Smasher, hoping that none of the Decepticons can use it. So it basically ends with Megatron, Shockwave, Soundwave, and Starscream, and I think Shadow Striker and Slipstream too, all heading down the elevator, where Shockwave reveals to Megatron this was all part of his plan, and that even though the Planet Smasher was destroyed, this doesn't change things. And meanwhile, Starscream still seems to be really angry at Megatron for basically being kicked off the head of the Seekers and having Slipstream replace them. And it seems to be that Starscream's going to be trying to get some revenge at Megatron in later episodes, if not the next episode. And so that was my review of Transformers Cyberverse Power of the Spark Season 2, Episode 1, Sea of Tranquility. If I had to rate this episode, I would easily give it a 9.5 out of 10. A superb way to start off this new season. Now that we've gotten all Bumblebee's memories back together, we can jump into a proper fight between the Autobots and Decepticons, and it's really interesting to see where this goes. We had a great big fight scene with all the Autobots and Decepticons battling each other, a lot better than the other big battles we saw back in Season 1 with the Episode 3 Allspark and Episode 17 Awakened Sleeping Giants, and having a bunch of, like, a moment where basically every Autobot we saw back in Season 1 get to shine, even all the Decepticons. We got characters even like Rack and Ruin and Wheeljack, who we barely saw in Season 1, have like a couple 15 to 20 seconds of fame in this, or in the spotlight in this episode. And then we even got Decepticons like Shadow Striker, Soundwave, Shockwave. Everyone got a chance to shine, which this show should continue doing, and make sure that everyone feels involved in the story to a degree, even if it's only for 20 seconds. Still, I really, really enjoyed this episode. The only con, really, is just the fact that during the Starscream and Windblade fight, it just felt like Starscream's attacks all kind of did the same thing. A whole salvo of missiles did as much damage as almost a single blaster shot from one Seeker. It just feels a little bit inconsequential. So that's going to be it for this review. I'll be back soon, probably the day after this, with Episode 2, Bad Moon Rising. If you like this review, be sure to like, comment, and of course subscribe, and I will see you guys later.